This is Dr. Laura Froyen, and I'm just hopping on real quick to talk a little bit about holiday meltdowns. So, I don't know about your kids, but for me and in my family, holidays can be a little bit stressful. Lots of fun, lots of connection, but also different expectations, different people around, lots of things going on, oftentimes food that my kids don't normally eat. And all of those things can kind of come together and coalesce into a situation where kids are having a harder time and sometimes have meltdowns and tantrums. So I wanted to just talk with you real quick about 3 things you can do to set your kids up for success so that you don't find yourself in a situation where they kind of need to have a meltdown to reset themselves. And then 3 tips for what to do if you find yourselves in the midst of a meltdown and how to help them. So the first thing that we really need to understand is, what is the purpose of a meltdown? Kids have meltdowns for a reason. Most of the time when a child is melting down and they're on this path towards a meltdown, they're on this trajectory, and nothing that we do can get them off of that trajectory. Most of the time what we know is that they probably need to have that meltdown. They probably need to have the release that comes with it. They probably need to have a bunch of pent up emotions and stress that they've been kind of stuffing down, that they need to empty out and offload. And they also likely are at the end of their limits in terms of self-regulation. So sometimes something very small can be that last straw for your kids, and then they have a meltdown and it seems like they're melting down over nothing, over something really small, when in reality it's just been kind of the pile up of the stressors of the day. So if that's happening for you, or that's happened in the past, there's 3 things that you can do as you prepare for this holiday weekend that's coming up that can help make sure that this isn't as stressful of a situation for your child. That can support them so that they don't need to melt down. Now, I am not one to run away from or kind of avoid big feelings. Big feelings are part of life. They're part of a rich emotional experience that we want for our kids. So I'm not saying that we need to avoid meltdowns completely, but it would be nice if our holiday wasn't stressful on our kids, or so stressful that they needed to have a meltdown. So that's what I want to talk about with you today. So the first tip is to try to keep their rhythms, their schedule, the flow of their day as close to what's typical for them as possible. So I don't know about you, but oftentimes on holidays in my family, we have different eating schedules. And when that is happening for the grown-ups, I always try to make sure that my kids are getting food at their normal times, because we're very rhythmic beings. We are people who, human beings our bodies come to expect nourishment and calorie intake at a certain time of day. And if we're suddenly just not giving that to our kids, and we're expecting them to wait a couple hours to eat a big meal with a family, that's just not going to work for them. That lowers their ability to regulate themselves, and they aren't able to show up as their best selves. So keeping their rhythms the same. The same goes for rest time. So if you've got really little ones and they're used to taking a nap at a certain time, figure out a way to keep that schedule consistent for them. Okay, so that's the first tip, is to just kind of try to keep things as consistent as possible. And then the second one thing that I think is really helpful to do is to prepare them for what's going to happen. Let them know the day before. So today, what the plan is for tomorrow, who they're going to be seeing, where they're going to be going, what they're going to be doing. Especially if you have a sensitive child who maybe you're going to be taking to see some fireworks, or there's going to be something loud with noises, or there's going to be a relative around who maybe isn't as respectful of their boundaries. Preparing your child for those instances, making sure that, if there's going to be loud sounds, do they want headphones to cover their ears? If there's going to be a relative who maybe always kind of asks or demands for affection that they're not ready for, do they have a plan for how to go about, giving that high five to Aunt Myrtle or whoever it is? So preparing them and giving them a plan, and giving yourself a plan too, so that you can check in with them and know what their concerns or worries are, so that you're ready ahead of time. So that's something you can do today. And then the third thing is to build some respite, some quiet time and some play time into your day tomorrow. Make sure that they get time away from the hustle and bustle of a big family gathering, so that they can come into and drop into the healing power of play. Play is one of the ways that children process difficult things. It's one of the ways that they work through stressful experiences. It's one of the ways that they heal and offload. And so if you're giving them an opportunity to play quietly and independently by themselves for just a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, and possibly even with you as a kind of a facilitator of that play, and that will go a long way to helping them offload some of the stress so that they don't have to have a big meltdown to kind of get it all off their chest. So finding a quiet corner, if you're outside, just going to a quiet corner of the yard or the park where you are. If you're at someone else's home, ask, is there a quiet place where we could just get away and play on our own for a little bit? It's okay to ask those things. Your relatives want what's best for your kids too. And if you let them know, like, we're going to need just 15 minutes just to play on our own, most people will be open to that. So the 3 tips for kind of making a holiday less stressful on your kids so that they don't need to melt down are keeping as much as you can to their natural rhythm, the rhythm that you typically have throughout your day for eating and rest, those things. The second one is preparing them ahead of time and then making sure they get a chance to have some quiet playtime on their own or with you. And so then on the day of the holidays, on those days, if you've done these things that are, to prepare them and they still get overwhelmed, they still have, a meltdown, or they're still having big feelings or having a hard time, then I have some things to support you in that too. So first of all, you need to know the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. And we talked a little bit at the beginning of this video about what a meltdown is. A meltdown is when kids kind of have nothing left. They have no self-regulation left. They've kind of been holding it together and they've just got to release it all. They've have this emotional backpack that they've been carrying around and stuffing into all day. And at a certain point, they can't hold anymore. And so they take it off and they just dump it out all over us. We often see this when kids come back from school too. So meltdowns like that can happen for a lot of different reasons, but really they are something to welcome. They are healing for a child. They're good for a child. They're not something that we need to avoid. It's great if we can make a situation not stressful, so stressful, that they need to stuff things in their backpack and then empty it out. But if they are in a place where they do need to empty it out, they need to recover from the stress of or the sensory overload, just all the people and the pressures, like a meltdown is something we should welcome with open arms and open hearts. Now, a tantrum is a little bit different. A tantrum is usually around when a child has a goal in mind and they're being prevented from meeting it. And they're having a hard time regulating themselves as they process the disappointment of not being able to meet that goal. And you can do a little bit of a test to see if it's a meltdown or a tantrum by asking yourself, so if I gave my child what they want right now, would the tantrum, would it be over? And if the answer is yes, they would, take the second ice cream cone that you said no to and happily skip away. That was probably a tantrum. If you say no, like I've been giving them what they want and they're still melting down, like that's a meltdown. That's when we got to hold a boundary nice and firm so that they can empty out that emotional backpack. And so then when that happens, so that, like, the first tip then, is to really get clear. Are they having a tantrum or are they having a meltdown? And if they're having a meltdown, then the next thing you do is you need to regulate yourself, because a melting down child is a dysregulated child. They are melting down because they can't regulate themselves. And what's beautiful about a parent-child relationship is that we can help them regulate. Our state regulates their state. So when we're calm and collected and our voice is lower and we're chill and we're peaceful, we can lend that energy, that regulation to them. So rather than joining in their chaos, coming up above them, they just ratchet up above too. We need to come down under. We need to soothe ourselves so that we can soothe our child. A good thing that you can say in your head when this is happening is, I take a breath for me and I take a breath for my child. And just do that a little bit, just a little bit of breathing. And what's beautiful about that is that the neurons that are firing in our brain that trigger that nice deep inhalation that's really grounding to our nervous systems, those neurons fire in your kid's brain too. We have these mirror neurons, and their only job is to kind of get us synced up with each other. And they're especially in tune with our parent, with your parents, in the parent-child relationship. So your state regulates their state. Calm yourself first and get yourself into this mindset of, this meltdown is good for my child. I'm going to welcome this meltdown. This meltdown is healing for her. She needs this. He needs to blow off steam, and I'm going to hold it for him. And then the third tip is to just hold space with empathy and compassion. Put yourself in your kid's shoes. So oftentimes we have expectations for our kids in these holiday situations that are different than how they would normally be expected to interact or behave. We are oftentimes, when we're in holidays with our families, our window of what's acceptable behavior from our kids is much smaller. We feel like we're under a microscope. We feel like we're being judged, and as a result, we zoom in our window of expectation. And oftentimes we don't communicate that to our kid, and it's stressful on them. And so really tapping into compassion for them, that these are hard things. If they've been around a lot of loud fireworks, for example, or around a lot of loud people that they're not used to being around, especially right now when we've been socially isolated, this is one of the first big holidays that we're moving into as a global community that's been isolating for months at a time. Your kids aren't going to be used to being around a whole lot of people. They might need time away. They might need to kind of offload the stress of these new expectations that they're not used to anymore. And so really tapping into compassion and empathy and just holding space. Remember that these big feelings that they're having are like waves, and waves come, they're big, they seem scary, they crash over us, and if we just ride it out, if we just stay afloat, they'll be gone. And maybe another one comes and we ride it out, but soon enough, your kids will get all of that out, and this feeling. I'm positive you've experienced it before. And when they get it all out, they release. And they relax, and they kind of go limp noodle on you. And the young kids especially will often fall asleep right after this. They'll just sleep. And that tells you how good this was for them, how much they needed it. And you don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to be afraid of their big feelings. They can't rock you. You can be their port in the storm. You can be that steady rock in the middle of the raging ocean. And they can know that you've got this. And you're not going anywhere. That your love and support are unconditional. That you don't care what the relatives are thinking about their behavior. That you could care less. Or actually, you couldn't care less what people are thinking. That you're just there. You're present with them. You want to help them, and you want to support them. That's what they need to know. That's what they need in those moments. And you have that all within you already. You have it all within you. You can offer that with no question. I'm positive that you can. Okay, so those are the things I wanted to tell you. Please, if you are just hopping in late, go back. The replay will be on my Facebook page and in IGTV. And let me know what you think. If you have questions about this, and feel free to pop them in the comments. I always come back and check on them, and share this with a friend. If you know someone who is going to go to a big party tomorrow, let them know that there's things they can do to prepare, and there's things that they can do to make it easier on their kids. And take really good care of yourselves. All right, bye.